Warning, this content is for entertainment and educational purposes only. All right, folks, Big Paul here today with another Anabolic Q&A. I got some good questions lined up today. Should Caber always be used with 19 Nors like Deca and Tren? Is insulin necessary to manage high blood sugar from HGH? The good old IM versus SubQ HGH debate. What's an ideal rate of weight gain for enhanced lifters on a muscle gain phase? Should bodybuilders incorporate a variety of protein sources in their diets? And the age-old question, does high hematocrit hemoglobin and red blood cell count increase your risk of a stroke, heart attack, or clot? I just want to remind you folks that most of these questions come from my Team Anabolic Bodybuilding member site. You can join over there for $30 a month. And please give me a follow on other platforms like Instagram, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. I'm elsewhere. X, give me a follow over there just in case my channel gets blown up again. I have backup resources where you can also find my content on those other platforms. And we'll dig into all these questions right now. All right, first question I've got here is from Brandon Terranova from the Team Anabolic Bodybuilding member site. Brandon says, so what's the deal with Caber when you're running 19 Nors like Deca and Tren? I've always hear people say you need it to keep prolactin in check and you'll end up with Deca dick. But there are others that say that you don't need it unless you actually have science and blood work that show that there's some issues. Some guys swear by 0.25 milligrams twice a week as a preventive, and others say it's overkill, just taking dopamine for no reason. Is Caber something that you should have on deck just in case? I've talked about this extensively many times. I would not touch Caber with a 10-foot pole. And if you're in a situation where things are so bad, your prolactin's so bad that you need to deploy Caber, you've got bigger problems going on. I would say if your prolactin gets that elevated, there's a bunch of other issues that probably could be going on. Usually, when you see elevated prolactin, it is in concert with having elevated estrogen. It doesn't happen on its own. Here's the thing with cabergoline, and I don't know why bros have decided that this is just a necessary ancillary. It is a dopamine agonist. Dopamine agonists are fucking gnarly, man. Like, I've seen guys have terrible dopamine agonist withdrawal syndrome from using Caber. You can look it up if you want. Go do a Google search on dopamine agonist withdrawal syndrome. It is basically like coming off of heroin, man. Guys end up with terrible side effects. They end up with depression, suicidal idealization, all of these other crazy things that can happen and can permanently fuck you up. So I wouldn't just go taking it as a preventative. It's really unnecessary. And to be honest with you, I look at hundreds of blood panels annually and I almost never see severely elevated prolactin. Once in a blue moon, I'll see guys with a slightly elevated prolactin. Most often when I find guys that have elevated prolactin, it's not even from running the 19 Nors. It's usually from smoking too much weed or from kratom. I've seen dudes with blown up prolactin from kratom. Now, occasionally I'll see a guy with a super high prolactin level, and that is a warning sign that you might have a prolactin secreting pituitary tumor, and that's a bigger issue that you got to get checked out. Typically, they're not life-threatening, but it's something that you need to be aware of and pay attention to. But for the most part, I don't see high prolactin with guys that are running 19 Nors. Now, how high prolactin can happen with these 19 Nors is that they are synthetic progestins and have a high affinity for the progesterone receptor. This, in combination with high estrogen, can increase prolactin secretion in some susceptible people. Now, you'll notice like guys talk about running Deca-only cycles, not having any issues and not having any of the side effects. It's likely due to the estrogenic response. Estrogen is basically amplified when you're running 19 NORs. And estrogen by itself doesn't raise prolactin, but it amplifies the prolactin increasing effects of Tren and Deca. And from what we have seen, that Deca also seems to increase aromatization in some way, directly or indirectly. It seems to increase aromatase expression. I don't have any solid data on that, but that's just what I've seen. Anecdote, when guys run Deca along with tests, they tend to aromatize more heavily than they do just running either by themselves. So think of it this way: dopamine is the brake on prolactin. It stops prolactin. It inhibits prolactin release. Progesterone increases prolactin secretion. And think of it as estrogen is sort of like the foot on the gas. It amplifies the effect of all of the above. Once again, like I've said, I look at hundreds of blood panels. I do consult calls with people all the time that come to me with blood work and have these issues, and I take a look at their blood panels. I look at hundreds of them annually on my consult calls, and these guys all think that they have prolactin issues, almost never do. And occasionally it does, and here's my thing. If Deca or Tren causes you to have high prolactin, don't take fucking Deca or Tren. Take something else. Choose a different drug. P5P can potentially help. It has some lowering effect on it. Also, if you're a chronic weed smoker or taking kratom and you have high prolactin, you might want to consider removing those from the equation as well. And if that doesn't fix it and the prolactin levels are through the roof, you probably need to go see the doctor and get evaluated for a prolactin secreting pituitary tumor. All right, next question here is from Philip Fuller. Philip asks, is insulin always recommended to use when HGH raises morning fasted blood glucose, or is it better to take compounds like berberine and metformin to control insulin sensitivity until GH raises A1C to pre-diabetic status? Then it's just simply cut off the cycle until A1C improves. I've kind of come full circle on this. I used to think that using Lantus was a solution for this, but really Lantus, it's a long-acting basal insulin. I know it's been somewhat popular in bodybuilding circles for dealing with high glucose levels from taking HGH and pounding a bunch of fucking carbohydrates and all the other stupid shit we do in bodybuilding. If you're at the point where your glucose levels and your A1C are high, if your fasting glucose levels are consistently high, if your glucose levels throughout the day are consistently high, and you're using Lantus to deal with it, you have a bigger problem. You're already insulin resistant. There's bigger issues going on, and you need to address that underlying insulin resistance. And what happens when you use Lantus, you're going to get a temporary relief from this problem. You're going to pull the glucose levels down. It's a temporary relief, and you might be able to buy yourself a little bit more time. But what happens, and as a diabetic, I know this firsthand, the more insulin you use, the more insulin resistance you're going to have. It is a spiraling, cascading thing that just gets out of fucking control. And after a while, you end up where you get to a point where you have to use more and more insulin to keep the blood sugar under control, and more insulin leads to more and more insulin resistance. Now, there is an argument with guys that are pounding a shit ton of carbs. I've heard this argument postulated that using Lantus can be prophylactic and prevent beta cell burnout. Now, is that true? I don't know. Potentially. But I wouldn't bet my paycheck on it. And also, if you're pounding Lantus daily every fucking day, you probably, to keep things under control, you probably have some underlying insulin resistance that needs to be addressed. Now, what I would suggest is fixing that insulin resistance before throwing Lantus at it. I've used Lantus. I use it daily because I'm a type 1.5 diabetic. My body doesn't make enough insulin, and trust me, I'm always battling with glucose control. It fucking sucks, man. You don't want to make yourself diabetic. Being a diabetic is no fun, man. It's a pain in the ass, literally. You don't want to make yourself diabetic. So now we have some cool tools at our disposal to help with insulin resistance that seem to fix it pretty quickly. If, retatrutide comes to mind right now. Metformin's okay, but I would say retatrutide just stomps metformin when it comes to fixing this stuff. Metformin really has more of an effect on gluconeogenesis and glycogen release from the liver, et cetera, and it has some downstream effects on insulin sensitivity, but it's not as potent as retatrutide. Retatrutide addresses multiple pathways. It just really is borderline a miracle drug. Fixes lipids, all other sorts of things. Fixes insulin sensitivity, increases insulin secretion, lowers hepatic glucose release. I mean, just fixes non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. I mean, all these other problems that bodybuilders probably have from just pounding a shit ton of food and taking growth hormone. But if you're in a situation where your fasting glucose is high on a regular basis, I probably would take a GH vacation, get on some retatrutide, maybe run metformin with the retatrutide, get that addressed, get yourself sorted out. If you want to run some berberine as a prophylactic, it certainly is not going to hurt. Berberine, as far as natural solutions go, it's the most effective that we have at our disposal. It does seem to help. It's from studies I've seen, it's comparable to metformin, but nothing holds a candle to some of these new GLP-1 drugs. These things are just fucking crazy, man. The stuff that they do, just being honest with you. Having been on this stuff for years, metformin doesn't even put a dent in the stuff compared to what even just 1 milligram of retatrutide will do. It's pretty profound what it does. All right, Jay Roberts has a question here. It's the good old IM versus SubQ GH administration. He said, "Hey, Paul, I'm curious about the SubQ versus IM administration. I know IM dosing yields a much larger peak. I've heard some people say the A1C is better with subcutaneous and it doesn't decrease as rapidly. Has anyone seen anything that looked at IGF-1 response to IM versus subcutaneous administration for GH? I know the IGF-1 response is quite delayed and long-lasting. I'm wondering if a bigger peak would ultimately yield more IGF-1 release and then better growth results overall or more adverse effects. I've tried dosing my GH-IM and it made me hypoglycemic and extremely tired compared to the subcutaneous." This debate rages on. I've tried both ways, man. I look, at some point, just use the damn drug the way it was designed to be used. If you look at the pamphlet that comes in with the Serostem, I've used Serostem, or you can just look online. All of these drugs were designed to be used subcutaneously. And that was for a reason. They've studied the stuff extensively. They found that the best compliance is subcutaneous. They found that the best overall response was subcutaneous. There are influencers out there that love to vastly overcomplicate this shit, taking 20 different injections all damn day long. And, look, ultimately, does it yield a better result on the stage? I think that's what it really boils down to me. Do the guys that do subcutaneous versus intramuscular look any better? Another thing that I would consider too, and I don't think this is something that guys have thought about, anything that is a water-based injectable is higher risk of bacteria accumulation and infections. Anybody who's ever had a muscle abscess from a bad shot, man, you're putting yourself at a higher risk if you're doing these water-based administration of drugs in intramuscular. I mean, look, the more times you're shooting yourself, like if you're doing this 5 times a day, I mean, you're increasing the odds that you're going to get an abscess at some point. And trust me, they're no fucking fun. I had one a couple years ago, had to have a cut open and go in every day and get the packing changed on it for 2 weeks. It sucked, man. You don't want to deal with that. And the one I had was from an L-carnitine shot. It was fucking terrible, man. I had an L-carnitine shot in my quad that went bad. And I said, never again. I'm never putting this shit in my fucking muscle again. Not using that shit anymore. There's also some studies that show that the absorption rate I've seen, I made a note on the exact number. It says, I'll read exactly what I found here. The absolute bioavailability is slightly lower with subcutaneous administration, about 63 versus 75%. For IM administration. So Growth hormone acts like a growth hormone, acts through the growth hormone receptor, which is a surface cell cytokine receptor. It does not need the cell itself to exert its effects, but instead signals through the receptor activation downstream pathways. Once it latches onto the receptor, it sets off signaling cascades like JAK2, STAT, that drive other downstream effects. So really, it doesn't make any fucking difference. In clinical studies, it's shown both IM and subcutaneous injections have similar IGF-1 results long term. Now, what we know, SubQ is going to be a bit slower. I think it's like 6 to 8 hours at the growth hormone before it tails off. IGF-1 has a delayed response. I think it's up to 3 days after it peaks, or that it peaks within 24 hours, and I think it holds for up to 3 days. And ultimately, if we're trying to grow muscle, that's all that really matters. If you are in a fat loss phase, I could understand the argument that maybe subcutaneous or maybe intramuscular multiple times a day might be better for fat burning. I could see some validity to that. Ultimately, I'm not a fucking biochemist or a scientist. I'm just some bro that reads a lot of shit. But my take on it, man, just take it the way it was designed. Like, for fuck's sakes, like, I don't have time to be taking 5 shots a day and kvetching over whether subcutaneous or intramuscular injections are better. I mean, just take the damn drug. Take it before you go to bed. For me, I found that blood sugar levels remain more stable when you take it at night rather than splitting it up throughout the day. I find that my blood sugar rises. It could be because of, my situation, that I have, have to be more careful with insulin resistance or whatnot. But I don't know. Just take the damn drug the way it was designed to be taken. I have seen zero difference. While the blood work might say something different, I've seen, they don't judge your blood panels when you get on the bodybuilding stage. The judges don't give a fuck what your IGF-1 levels are. Ultimately, it's about how you look. And I would say that, I have seen zero difference in how guys look during IM versus SubQ injections. It's just unnecessary. Worry about something that's really contributing no additional results. All right, next question here is from Eric Lubin. Eric asks, "Yo, Big Paul, I'm experiencing gut issues post first blast, which I've never had these issues before in my entire life. Can you explain how to combat gut issues for PED users and also ways to prevent that from happening in the future? Is it PED related, or could it be just the food that I'm eating, specifically the lack of fiber and the carbs that I eat for training? I've increased my soluble fiber intake, which seems to be helping. However, bodybuilder, the carbs I eat are 90% boiled potatoes and white rice. Thanks, Big Paul." I mean, it could be all the above. I mean, it depends on what drugs you're taking. There are certain PEDs that are notorious for wrecking your gut. Orals, specifically, Anadrol is man, I can't even do it anymore. Like it just fucking nukes my stomach. I will, I take Anadrol and I have acid reflux and diarrhea within 60 minutes of taking it. My stomach gives me the big old middle finger, and you'll see it with guys at the end of contest prep when they're smashing orals. Digestion just gets horrendous. And the food that we're piling in on top of it probably doesn't help things either. Really heavy androgen loads can also cause vagal nerve stimulation, which is going to increase proton pump activity, causing an increase in stomach acid. That also can be an issue with acid reflux. I mean, it really depends on what stomach issues you have. The common ones that I run into are guys with gas and bloating. Acid reflux, diarrhea would be the big ones that I see dudes running into when they are on cycle. I would say for the most part, just stay away from orals, only in limited runs, 4 to 6 week runs, and only if your stomach is feeling good. And honestly, I just kind of limit orals to contest prep at this point when they're a tool that I need to achieve a certain body composition at the end of contest prep. In the off season, for the most part, and I think most pro bodybuilders eventually come to this conclusion that it fucks their digestion up so bad that they just can't make progress. They can't eat the food that they need to eat. Now, also with the food choices, a lot of guys end up eating high FODMAP foods. If you're having gas and bloating, take a look at the FODMAP list. A lot of the stuff that's on the high FODMAP category are common bodybuilder foods. Things like broccoli. Broccoli is a common offender. Onions, peppers, garlic. A lot of times the seasonings that guys use, they douse everything with these seasonings that are loaded with garlic and onion powder, which will fuck your stomach up bad, man, after long-term exposure to it. Things like eggs, after a while, it seems to be the albumin in eggs causes gut issues, so you sort of need to, especially egg whites. I had to completely remove eggs from my diet for a period of time until my body sort of reacclimated to them. They were a huge problem for me. A lot of the cheaper, shittier protein powders cause all sorts of digestive issues. There's just a bunch of stuff. So I would take a look at the FODMAP list, run a low FODMAP diet, be really careful with spices and stuff. Hot sauce, dudes love to douse shit with hot sauce because the food we eat's pretty fucking bland. It tastes like shit, and so, good way to make some chicken and rice taste great is to dump Frank's Red Hot all over it. But that also will melt your gut long term too. Guys end up with ulcers and shit like that long term. And, so rule of thumb, summing this up, low FODMAP diet, be careful with putting the hot sauce all over shit. Look at your supplements too, your over-the-counter supplements. There are a lot of supplements that can wreck your stomach. And I'm not trying to slam berberine. Berberine's very effective, but I realized that berberine was fucking my stomach up bad. I had to drop the berberine. There's other supplements. A lot of these supplements have pepperine in them for absorption, and pepperine can really nuke your stomach. So take a hard look at the supplements that you're taking and see if any of those may have something in it that are gut irritants. And, just stick to good, clean, whole foods. Stay away from all the processed shit that we eat, like the protein powders, things like that, protein bars, stuff that guys end up eating. Just eat good, clean, whole foods. Keep the spices simple. Just salt, pepper. Even pepper can cause problems sometimes. Stay away from high FODMAP shit like broccoli, onions, peppers, stuff like that, and I think your gut problems will go away. Next question is from Dylan W. What is the rate of weight gain you typically target for bros during a gain phase? As a clear physique changes start to come through, we can adjust food and gear and tune it in so that we're not overshooting and gaining more fat than necessary. But what do you consider to be a good rate of change generally? From a study I saw on natural athletes, they came up with something like 0.3 pounds of lean tissue per week. For newer lifters, there's not much scientific info that I found on enhanced, experienced lifters that can put lean tissue on. Yeah, there's nothing really available for PED users. And honestly, guys look at these studies that are based on natties. I don't think they're really that relevant for our crowd. We can deduce certain things from them, but I don't know how relevant they are with us. Ultimately, what I look at, and I just have gotten to the point where I don't get too hung up on weight changes anymore, both on contest prep and on the off-season phase. I let the pitchers tell the story. Now, weight is certainly a metric to monitor. If the scale is moving up and I look at the pitchers and there hasn't been any massive decline in body composition, if it doesn't look like there's been additional body fat accumulation, then we are doing great. So I let the pitchers ultimately drive where we are going. And it's the same thing on a contest prep. Like sometimes guys freak out when they're not losing weight on contest prep, but they're continuing to get harder. So I let the pitchers tell the story. Now, what can we realistically expect? When you first start a cycle, usually there's going to be a period of rapid weight gain. Guys get all excited because they put on 10 pounds the first month. Most of that is just additional glycogen synthesis, water and mineral retention, additional nitrogen retention, and then things sort of level off from there, and then you end up getting into this slow grind. Realistically, when we talk about rates of muscle gain, we have examples, real-life examples out there we can look at. Nick Walker would be an example. A guy put on, like 100 pounds of muscle over a 10-year period of time. 8-year period of time. I don't know what it is. So best case scenario, we know that, the guys that are the top athletes in the world are putting on 10 to 15 pounds of real tissue per year until they hit their genetic potential. Now, look, that's not linear. It's not to say that first year, it's like level across. The first year is going to be more, and then it just kind of goes down from there. I had one year where I put on 25, 30 pounds of stage weight in a year. That never happened for me again. It slowed down after that. It was 5, 10 pounds. But I'd say ultimately, if you can put on 5 to 10 pounds of real stage weight per year, that is a win. If you can do 5 to 10 pounds a year for the next 5 years, that's 25 to 50 pounds of additional muscle that you put on your frame. Think about adding 25 1-pound ribeyes to your body, and that's going to be what you look like. I mean, you're going to be the biggest dude in your gym. You're probably going to be the most jacked guy in your gym at that point and competing for a pro card. So I think that's the realistic rate of gain. Guys get very impatient. Guys get very frustrated when they don't see the scale moving that fast. Don't obsess over the scale. Get lean first. That's usually what I tell my clients. Then move the weight up. Keep pushing the food up until you see body composition decline. If body composition starts to decline, you can always throw more anabolics at it to help level that out. But those are the two levers really we're pulling in the off season: the anabolics and food. And usually we start with food first. We want food to do the work. Keep the food clean, good, clean, whole food. Keep the fats moderate to low, and crank up the food until you hit a threshold where body composition starts to decline. I will say this: it's pretty hard to get fat eating chicken and rice. If you're eating chicken and rice and cod and rice and egg whites and rice, from what I've found, that people's appetite taps out before their body fat gets out of control. It's when you start eating all the trash, high-fat stuff, smashing burgers and going to the sushi buffet and getting, the tempura rolls and shit like that is when guys start getting fat. But if you're sticking to clean foods, it's really fucking hard to get fat. That would be my advice. Try to push as much good, clean food as you can get away with without having a serious decline in body composition. Incrementally raise that food up until you hit a threshold and go from there. Jason Saka has a question. Is utilizing a rebound mainly for increased appetite in those who have a hard time with appetite, or would it be wiser to reverse out of a cut for someone with a high appetite? No, it really doesn't have a lot to do with appetite. What we're trying to do is get the body in a good spot hormonally for growth. When you get yourself super lean, myostatin's going to be lower. Insulin sensitivity is going to be increased. AMPK is going to be lower, and you're going to set yourself up for a place where you're going to be ripe for growth. Gastric emptying is going to be increased. You're going to be ready to grow, and especially with guys with higher appetites, if you try to reverse, what I've seen, Graylin always wins. Dudes end up fucking cracking and just going off on the cheeseburgers and donuts and cookies and shit. Just eat food. Eat good, clean food. Go back to your off-season diet. Use that phase to grow. And as I mentioned in the previous question, it's pretty fucking hard to get fat on chicken and rice. You have to try. Really, if you're eating good, clean, lean meats, rice, and you're just pounding as much as you can, most people will hit their limit with how much chicken and rice they can smash down before they actually get fat. So if you're the dude with the big appetite, just go hog wild on chicken and rice post-show until the appetite settles down. I promise you're not going to get fat. I do this hundreds of times with guys. The reverse diet almost never works unless you're somebody who is just prone to water gain and a bunch of other problems. Just go back to your off-season diet. Smash a bunch of good, clean food. Your appetite will settle down after a few weeks. If you try to reverse, most people just end up fucking cracking and cheating anyway. All right, the next question is from Rowan Baldwin Avery. Rowan asks, what are your thoughts on Broderick Chavez's take on eating a variety of protein sources to avoid missing out on obscure amino acids? So I haven't specifically heard Broderick talk about this. I know he has some stuff about diet. Next time I get him on, we can have a diet discussion and get his opinions on it. But essentially, there are 20 amino acids that are necessary for muscle growth. 9 of those are essential, and you can't get your body can't make them on its own. That you have to get from food sources. Plant-based proteins are typically not complete. You have to combine plant-based proteins to get all the amino acids that are necessary. And certain animal proteins that do have complete amino acid profiles have them in different balances. For example, like whey is really high in leucine, whereas eggs don't have much leucine in it. So if you're eating egg whites all day long, you're probably not getting enough leucine. And I'm assuming Broderick is talking about, like, spreading things around, like, for example, like plants typically don't have taurine in it, and meat-based products are going to have taurine in it. Glycine and proline are typically more abundant in connective tissue, and so those are, something that a lot of people don't get. Things like bone broth, connective tissue. People probably aren't getting enough of those in. So I get what, once again, I haven't read what he wrote, but I assume that he's talking about having a diversity of protein sources. And so you're getting adequate amounts of all of these amino acids that are necessary for collagen synthesis, for muscle growth, etc. Those are also critical for recovery and connective tissue health. I mean, if you're just eating chicken and rice all day long, you're probably going to be deficient in some of these. So it makes sense to mix up things a little bit. I mean, just even mixing a little bit of bone broth in with your chicken and rice could be enough to cover those bases. But I would mix up my protein sources. I do salmon. I'll do one piece of fatty meat per day. Like I'll do like a piece of salmon. I'll do egg whites and one whole egg yolk. I'll do a serving of red meat. I'll do some chicken during the day. I use bone broth as well when I'm on my diet, and I'll have one serving of whey protein per day. And then I put some EAAs in a shake for my intra workout. And so that way I'm getting all the bases covered for the most part. I'm sure I'm probably missing some stuff here and there and could probably be optimized a little better. I think Stan Efferding's vertical diet does a really good job of addressing all this stuff if you want to check out his food choices. But, I joke when I say chicken rice repeat. That's Justin Harris's thing. That's probably not the best approach. Eating only chicken and rice all day long. Diversify your protein sources and making sure you're having all the amino acids covered. All right, next question here is from Daniel Adams. He is asking about getting ready for a pro qualifier. As a coach, when a client is looking to do a national qualifier to qualify for and then a national show following, how do you aim the show timings? Are you trying to qualify earlier in the year and then do national show later in the year on another prep, or give yourself some time in case you need to do another local show? Or are you trying to get them close together so you can get within a few weeks of each other? Ultimately, if you are ready for a national show, you shouldn't need to do multiple local shows to qualify unless it's just a freak show and people show up. If you're having to do multiple local shows to get your national qualification, if you're not finishing in places that get you qualified for a national show, you're not going to do very well at a national show. You're not ready yet. You should be able to go into a local show and smoke everybody if you're going to do well on a national show. There might be that one or two dudes that are also there getting their qualification. There's usually like 2 or 3 dudes that show up at a local show that are national competitors, so you may run up against that guy, but it lets you know where you stand. Now, what I like to do, and it depends on the age of the competitor. If a guy's younger, usually they can bounce back and do shows closer together. It depends on how long you've been on prep. I would say, if you're an older guy, like a Masters competitor like me, you need some time between shows. Like I can't, most Masters competitors do not fare well when they try to do back-to-back shows. You usually just have to pick one that you're peaking for, and that's really the show you aim for. You're not going to nail multiple shows back-to-back as a 40 or 50-year-old competitor. You need some time between them. I like at least 6 months between shows for my older guys. For younger guys, yeah, sure. Sometimes actually doing consecutive shows can be good. You can improve conditioning. You can get yourself in a better place. It gives you an idea where you're at. A lot of times it just depends on your body, how your body responds to stuff. I will say this, after you do a show, there is a period of water rebound, especially if diuretics are in play, where you're going to kind of have some water retention, and that needs to settle down before you go in to do another show. That's why a lot of guys, when they're doing local shows, they won't put the gas pedal down too hard. They just kind of treat it as another day. They walk on stage, maybe a little water depletion, get out there, compete, get their qualification, and then they go do their national show. Now, once you have your qualification for the national show, that is good for 2 competitive seasons. It's not 2 years from the date that you compete, it's 2 calendar years. So if I get my qualification for a national show in 2025, I'm good to go for 2025 and 2026. From what I recall, the way the NPC works, if you have a top 5 finish in a national show, you do not need to qualify again at a local show to compete in another national show. That's generally what I see. So rule of thumb, older competitors, you need some time in between. Younger competitors, sure, you can do it. Really, you have to pick one show that you go all in on your peak on, and that's pretty much it. If you need to do multiple national shows, most of them are smashed together in that summer season. Like if you're close, like if you're top, first call out, you're close to getting your pro card. So if you need to run multiple national shows, I mean, there's 4 or 5 of them in the months of June, July, and August that are right there consecutively. So you do your local show early June, late May. Be ready for your national shows in the summer, and you can bang those out. If you're a younger competitor, if you're an older guy, probably wait until the next year to do your national show unless you feel good and you can continue to push on. Aaron G has a question. I was listening to an Instagram influencer, and this was his claim. That's your first mistake. Elevated red blood cell count while on test is not a concern for clotting, because test does not raise platelet levels, only red blood cell counts. What are the facts, Paul? Look, high red blood cell count, hemoglobin, and hematocrit are just sort of the cost of doing business when you're on PEDs. It just happens. It's just how it is. I haven't really seen a good, reliable way to keep it in check. I do know that some PEDs are worse than others, particularly Anadrol is pretty bad at raising red blood cell count. So is Equipoise. It seems to be more aggressive at raising red blood cell count. The ones that are less aggressive would be things like Primabol and Masteron. Deca doesn't seem to be too bad. Staying away from those things. But for the most part, what I see is guys, even on TRT, even low-dose TRT, they get some elevation. Usually hematocrit gets up 52, 53, and just kind of hangs out there. It doesn't matter whether you're running a gamma test or 200 milligrams. It seems to just sort of camp out in that range. But the thought process is that high hemoglobin in hematocrit, red blood cell count decreases blood viscosity. It makes the blood less viscous, so it's more prone to cause clots and blockages and things in the microvascularity or microvasculation. Sorry, I can't speak, but you get what I'm saying. In small blood vessels, and if you have high platelet counts on top of that, that is a recipe for disaster. That's when I get concerned. If I see high platelet counts alongside of increased red blood cell, hemoglobin, and hematocrit, then we got a problem that needs to be addressed. Now, there are supplements that we can take that will increase blood viscosity and sort of provide an insurance policy. Fish oil, low-dose aspirin every other day are things that you can take that are going to help keep the blood more, give the blood more viscosity, and help with blood flow. Additional hydration, just staying hydrated. Nattokinase seems to help a bit as well. Making sure that your blood pressure is in check, making sure that you're not, you don't have any major vasoconstriction going on. There's other things you can do. Make sure that you're not using nicotine products on top of it, things that are going to increase your blood pressure, running a bunch of fucking stimulants. My rule of thumb, I don't get hyper I don't get too worried until hematocrit's over 55, red blood cell counts over 6, hemoglobin's over 18. Those are sort of the upper end of the thresholds. And, the old school thing to deal with it was just to go donate blood. There is some speculation that donating blood on the regular can actually cause a rebound effect where your body actually makes more hemoglobin, hematocrit, and red blood cells, or makes more red blood cells. I mean, that is a possibility. I've also seen a lot of dudes that are just get carried away with the blood donations and end up making themselves anemic and end up with vitamin B12 deficiency. I'm seeing more and more and more of that lately. It could also be the GLP-1s too. They seem to make guys anemic as well. Just another thing to be aware of. Those are some potential risks. Also, if you have sleep apnea is going to increase red blood cell count. So I would say things you can do to help: fish oil, taking a low dose aspirin every other day is potentially buys you some insurance. Nattokinase can potentially help a little bit. Making sure that you stay hydrated, making sure that blood pressure is in check, getting evaluated for sleep apnea, making sure that you have a CPAP machine if you do have sleep apnea. All of those things in concert should keep that hemoglobin, hematocrit in check. And honestly, if you're below 53 on hematocrit, you're probably fine, unless your platelet counts are high. And if your platelet counts are high, that's a whole other problem. There's no evidence that running PEDs increases platelet counts. I very rarely see guys with high platelet counts, but if you do have it, it's something that needs to be addressed and discussed with your medical doctor. All right, last but not least, this one is from Brandon Terranova. When using things like ARBs and beta blockers while on cycle, do you stop, drop, or reduce them when you're on cruise? How does cycling these things work? Not seeking your medical advice. Well, I am not a medical doctor, so I would be the wrong one to listen to for medical advice. I'm just a gym bro. Don't listen to me. Talk to your doctor, about medical advice. Yeah. So look. Here's the thing. If you don't have high blood pressure, you don't need to be taking ARBs and beta blockers. If you have high blood pressure, they are a tool in the toolbox. And generally, from what I've seen, is some people are hypertensive, some people aren't. Some people have additional hypertension when they are on PEDs. There's multiple reasons for that. There's different pathways that we can address for the high blood pressure. I mean, with PEDs, the most common cause is water retention, which can be caused by increased renin-angiotensin-aldosterone stimulation. That can be from HGH use, it can be from high estrogen, it can be from androgens. The androgens, heavy androgen loads, if you're sensitive to androgens, can also cause CNS stimulation of the heart, and a beta blocker can help with that and lower pulse and lower blood pressure. ARBs or ACE inhibitors are used to address water retention. Guys like to throw Cialis at everything. The Cialis is not going to address water retention as much as we want it to. Look, it's not hurting anything. It helps give you good boners, so that is a benefit. But, ultimately, it's going to help with vasodilation and endothelial health and nitric oxide production. There's a bunch of other things that could be beneficial from running Cialis, but everybody seems to think that Cialis is a fix-all for high blood pressure. But ultimately, look, with these things, if you need them, they are a tool in the toolbox. I would discuss it with your medical doctor. I find most doctors are very generous with prescribing blood pressure medicine. They don't fight you. You just tell them what you want, what it's for. They'll give you whatever you want when it comes to blood pressure meds. You don't need to go find alternative sources. Most doctors are more than happy to prescribe you a blood pressure med or a statin if you need one. And for me, part of my health and safety protocol, I tend to be hypertensive. I have other health issues, is to run an ARB and an ARB and a beta blocker. I had a slight bit of LVH when I was in my early 40s, and I've been able to completely reverse that from being on a beta blocker and an ARB. I have also improved my ejection fraction from being in the low 50s up to close to 70 now, and I am a 52-year-old guy with a ejection fraction in the high 60s. There's not many guys my age, PED users or not, that have an ejection fraction that high. So clearly something has worked. So it is something that you can consider and talk to your doctor. I don't know that cycling on and off of it makes any fucking sense. Most of these drugs are really, they have a high safety profile. There's not much benefit for coming off of them. Only downsides if your doctor has deemed them medically necessary. I would just stay on them. There's really very little downside. Blood pressure medicines are some of the most widely used, well-studied drugs that we have, and there's very, very minimal downsides to running them, and mostly just benefits. So if your doctor says it's necessary, just stay on it. You don't need to cycle off. I will say this, sometimes on contest prep, my blood pressure will get too low, and I do have to drop them because I get hypotensive as I get in shape. That just goes to show you how much of a benefit losing weight and doing cardio is for your cardiovascular health and blood pressure. So that is evidence of that. All right, folks, that's all I've got for you on this one. Thank you for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you. I love all of you guys. Spread the love in the bodybuilding world. Bodybuilding is awesome. Performance enhancement is awesome. All of you folks are awesome. I love each and every one of you. Spread the love. Be kind to each other. There's enough assholes and jerks going around right now. We are a small community. Everybody thinks we're freaks and they hate us anyway. Let's be kind to each other. Let's do better. I really wish guys would just take it easy and chill out. And, you know, there seems to be a lot of hate on social media lately. That's my little statement. Be good to each other. Try to be nice. Try to care for each other. And every once in a while, there is a motherfucker that needs a kick in the balls. That does happen. You know who you are if you're a guy that needs a kick in the balls. Be nicer. Be better. All right, folks. I'll talk to you later. I'll see you on the next episode. Rock on, motherfuckers. For coaching or consultations, head over to www.anabolicbodybuilding.com to book your spot today. I can help you with optimizing hormones, fat loss, muscle gain, physique, athletic performance, nutrition, and health. For more information, shoot me an email at bigp3rd@gmail.com.